Picture this. You're a kid on the exposed internet in 2011. You love creative games like Roblox or Garry's Mod, or even more obscure things like Blockland. Whatever your sandbox of choice at the time, you hop onto the family computer for an afternoon of messing around as usual, and decide to browse for something new. You scroll through pages and pages of amateur game design programs and YouTube videos when you stumble upon it. A pixelated little game about placing blocks, collecting resources, and the promise of total creative freedom beyond the limits of any other game of its kind. After finding and clicking around its simplistic, mostly plain text website with a couple embeds and images, you feel a fixation growing within you, knowing soon you'll be begging your parents to buy you a copy. "It's only $26, you'll say. "I promise I'll play it all the time," not knowing just how true that statement will be. Eventually, they buy you a premium account for the game, and you fill in the sign-up form, and shortly after, you're loading up a world of possibility. There could be any number of wonders just over that hill, and by the same token, there could be any number of horrors hiding in the darkness of the night. Do you remember this feeling? Those of us who do will know that its unrivaled joy riles the imagination up to 11 as you play this unestablished little indie game. No one had any idea what at all it had in store, nor what the developers might bring to it with their next regular update. Some thought it would lean more into the hardened wilderness survival aspect, and others wanted it to be a more chill, cozy farming sim. Everybody had their own ideas of what the spirit of the game was, and what its best and worst aspects were. Over time, of course, this game would cement itself so completely into the cultural zeitgeist that even your grandma knows what a Minecraft is and what its core elements are. There's still plenty of creative potential in the game today, but we have enough knowledge of Minecraft and its design philosophy that some things are unquestionably off the table. This dulls that spirit of the unknown a little bit, and replaces it with hard-set branding and a game feel that I and many others love for different reasons entirely. But if Minecraft no longer evokes that feeling, then what does? To answer that question, allow me to paint you another picture. The year is 2024, nearly 15 years after that previous shared experience. You're sitting at your desk, browsing for a new game to play after the last 2-week Minecraft phase ended, when you hear about a new pixelated block game for the first time. Hell, maybe even from this video. It intrigues you, but you think, oh, it's just another Minecraft clone, how good could it be? And then you go to their website, and as the page loads up, you feel a rush of nostalgia and deja vu. Here you are, on the simple, handcrafted website of an indie developer's pixelated block game that you've taken interest in. No bells and whistles to be seen, just some information about the game, a couple of embeds and images, and a link to buy it. At this stage, you can go one of two ways. Let the fondness for the past carry you through that checkout, or look deeper into this game to find out if the purchase is well worth it. So is that purchase worth it? I mean, what sets Vintage Story apart? Well, that's what the rest of this video is here to tell you. But before I do, I want to go ahead and say that I'm not affiliated with the game in any official capacity, and I'm not here to just glaze it nonstop. I want to give my opinions as a humble, new player perspective from someone who's been playing Minecraft for over a decade now. Now with that out of the way, let me tell you a story. A vintage story. When you first boot up the game, you'll be met with a striking title screen with beautiful images of sights you might see on your travels, along with the usual choice of buttons, including things like a very in-depth settings menu allowing you to alter more aspects of the game than you would expect, and a menu advertising built-in mod support to further customize your experience. Speaking of your experience, if you make your way over to the single-player menu and to get your journey started, you'll find a selection of 5 game modes tailored to your preference of survival, exploration, building, and narrative. We'll mostly be focused on the standard game mode, as that's where I have the most experience and is described as the default intended Vintage Story experience. Now, I've gone out of my way to describe a title screen in such detail to say that the game, even in its menus, does everything to communicate to the player that it's your experience. and it's full of choices and customizations that'll ensure that you get to play the way that you like. And that is the first principle that Vintage Story tells you. And it's one that'll carry through to your entire play experience with this game. The second of these principles is made clear to you in the early stages of gameplay. That being that progression is time-consuming. You want to get food? You're going to spend most of your first day chasing animals and waiting on it to cook. Want shelter that's not a dirt hut? Get ready to march your way up the progression tree for it. Everything is designed to make you feel like you are slowly, steadily improving and progressing through the game. Even if you know exactly what you're doing and this is your 50th attempt at a world, there simply just aren't many corners to cut to make speeding up the game an option. Some may see this as an issue, but coupled with the nearly hour-long day-night cycle, I see it as a blessing. So many Minecraft worlds begin with a seasoned player going through the motions at supersonic speed and getting burnt out after fighting the Ender Dragon, having barely taken the time to build anything or explore the world around them with any degree of detail. Vintage Story solves this by ensuring the player will have downtime and plenty of things to fill said downtime. With interacting crafting systems like knapping, metalworking, and clay forming, just to name a few, there is always a hands-on activity to do while you wait for that next batch of food to cook. Every aspect of this game is slow goings and will require patience. But it also gives you the time to truly appreciate the atmosphere and logic behind the game's mechanics. And if you ever find yourself completely stuck without anything to work on, then pressing H will open up your guide, where you can read up on the game and find wholly new systems to work on that never existed to you before. It's a practical built-in wiki for the game, solving the issue of games like Terraria having to keep a web tutorial open on the side. When you find something to do, you'll find that another sprawling, stretching branch of the tree of activities that this game contains lying ahead of you. In my experience, I've really only had to pull up a tutorial once or twice for things that require a visual, since the text-based nature of the guide makes it kind of hard to describe built structures. But even in those cases, a lot of the time it's very intuitive to figure out what needs to be done next. For example, once I got into smithing, the guide led me step by step until I had hot metal on an anvil. Once formed, I looked at the heated slab of shaped copper and wondered aloud how to cool it off. A friend of mine I was playing with suggested that I try to throw it in the nearby water to quench it, like you would in real blacksmithing. No, that's too easy, I said, but I'll try it anyway. So I walked over to the lake and I tossed the hot metal in. Quickly it sizzled and smoked, cooling and finishing the piece flawlessly. I was shocked, since games like this usually have you do something special like build a quenching station, but this one I could figure out with just a little common sense. That's only one example. I ran into many cases like that throughout the learning experience, and sometimes mechanics can be a touch on the obscure side, but 90% of the time, either the guide or a little problem-solving skill will get the job done. So how did I, someone who's only been playing this game for about a week, get such a rich understanding of the game's core tenets and design? Truth be told, I didn't. All that depth was effectively communicated to me over a week of gameplay, without ever leaving the game's Bronze Age. There's still a ton to discover for me within Vintage Story, and that's what excites me the most. The more I play, the more it seems like this game has more to see. Heck, I just found out that windmills exist yesterday, not to mention the whisperings I've been hearing from folks in my Twitch chat, twitch.tv/voxel64 by the way, about the next big update being right around the corner. Now, I initially intended to revise this script super heavily once I beat the game and felt like I reached the end of the rabbit hole, but the more I play, the further that goal becomes with perspective. And don't misread me here, that is absolutely a great thing. So I decided to just put it out now, and maybe I'll release a follow-up later, potentially clarifying my opinions with more knowledge. This well is just too deep to plumb entirely in one go, and I wouldn't want to rush through it anyway, as that seems antithetical to the messaging of the game, and borderline impossible to boot. So don't take this video as a seasoned player's hard review of the game, but a long-time Minecrafter's first steps into a whole new block game, and the things that strike me. The compromise for my lack of knowledgeability being the assurance that this game is 100% worth the price of admission, and then some. Vintage Story has absolutely thrown me for a loop. What began as a wild curiosity into a perceived knockoff of my favorite game, guided by nostalgia, quickly became an abject fascination with something wholly new that lied just beyond the unassuming exterior. A game with design elements and clear philosophies that led it to wildly diverge from its predecessor. And, even though I don't know much about it, I know that Vintage Story is an experience that I enjoy and will continue to enjoy for years to come, in a very similar way to how I've enjoyed Minecraft for years before now. So whether you're on the fence about it, or haven't even heard of this hidden gem before now, give it a shot. You won't regret it.